Shift change at 1847. 14 patients on the board. I counted them twice because that's what charge nurses do. 26 years in emergency nursing. 14 of those as permanent night shift charge at Hennepin County. You want to know what makes a good charge nurse? It's not clinical skills. It's the board. You manage the board. You manage the department. Every bed, every acuity, every nurse-to-patient ratio, every pending admission, every discharge that's taking too long. I kept the tightest board in that ED, and I'll stand by that until they put me in the ground. January 2018, flu season. We'd been on diversion twice that week. The waiting room looked like a refugee camp. People in chairs, people on the floor, people leaning against walls with surgical masks that weren't doing a damn thing. We'd gone live on Epic 8 months prior, and half the staff still couldn't find the medication reconciliation tab. Agency nurses everywhere. 2 of my 4 Pod C nurses that night were travelers who'd been with us less than a week. I got my coffee from the break room. 2 sugars, splash of half and half from a carton that was probably expired. Checked the board. 14 patients across 3 pods. Pod A had the usual, 2 chest pains, a fall, a psych hold. Pod B was flu central. Pod C had 4 patients, a COPD exacerbation in bed 9, a lac repair in bed 10, a drunken disorderly sleeping it off in bed 11, and Karen Olson was the evening charge. Good nurse, meticulous. She'd been at Hennepin almost as long as I had. Came up through med-surg, transferred to the ED in 2009, made charge in 2014. We'd done 1,000 handoffs together. Same routine every time. Print the board, walk bed by bed, co-sign the sheet. We started in Pod A. Karen rattled through them fast. Stable, stable, psych waiting for a bed at Regions, stable. Pod B was all flu, nothing exciting. We got to Pod C. Bed 9, COPD, BiPAP at 12/5, last blood gas at 1730, pH 7.31, improving. Bed 10, lac repair, dermabond applied, discharge paperwork printing. Bed 11, public intox, GCS 15 now, PD notified, waiting for ride. Then Karen said, Bed 12. She flipped to the next line on her sheet. Robert Ames, 58-year-old male, chest pain, onset 4 hours prior to arrival. Substernal pressure type radiating to the left jaw. Troponin pending, first draw was 0.47 at 1620. Heparin drip running at 18 units per keys per hour. 2 peripheral IVs, 18 gauge right AC, 20 gauge left hand. Allergies, sulfa and morphine. Wife Margaret is at bedside. He's been hemodynamically stable. Last vitals at 1800 were 138/82. Heart rate 74, sinus rhythm, SpO2 97% on 2 liters nasal cannula. I wrote it all down, every word. That's what I do. I don't use the computer for handoff. I use a printed sheet with blanks, and I write in pen because pens don't crash and pens don't lose your data during an epic downtime. I wrote Ames Robert and the MRN she gave me, 447183, and his date of birth, March 15th, 1960. I wrote the troponin. I wrote the heparin rate. I wrote the wife's name because I always note who's at bedside in case we need to have a conversation at 3 a.m. Karen signed the bottom of my sheet. I signed it. She grabbed her coat and said something about the roads being bad. I told her to drive safe. I started rounding. Pod A first. Checked on the psych hold, made sure the sitter was awake. Pod B, made sure the flu patients had fluids running and Tylenol on board. Pod C last because it was the smallest census. Bed 9, checked the BiPAP settings. Bed 10, confirmed the discharge was processing. Bed 11, the drunk was on his phone, coherent, waiting. Bed 12 was at the far end of Pod C. Past the supply room, past the dirty utility, last curtain on the left before the fire exit. I'd walked to bed 12 10,000 times in 14 years. I pulled the curtain back. The bed was empty. Clean white linens tucked tight, hospital corners, monitor cables coiled neatly on the pillow. IV pole bare, no tubing, no pump, no heparin. The overhead light was off. The cardiac monitor was dark, in standby mode. The room smelled like bleach and nothing else. No Robert Ames, no wife, no 18 gauge in the right AC, no nasal cannula. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds. Then I pulled the curtain closed and walked back to the nurse's station. First thought, transfer. Happens all the time. Patient gets moved to telemetry or the cath lab and the evening charge forgot to update before handoff. It's flu season, beds are churning, things slip through. I've done it myself. You hand off a patient and 5 minutes later they're wheeled out. I sat down at the nurse's station and pulled up the tracking board. Pod C, Bed 9, Gutierrez, COPD, Bed 10, FAM, lack repair, Bed 11, Kowalski, public intox, Bed 12, blank, status, clean available. I clicked on the bed history. Bed 12 had been unoccupied since 200 that afternoon. Almost 17 hours, no patient assigned, no admission, no transfer, no discharge, just empty. I checked Epic, searched the patient tracker for Robert Ames, no results in active patients. Searched the MRN 447,183, no active encounter. I broadened the search to the last 72 hours, nothing. I searched by date of birth, March 15, 1960. No matches in any active census across the entire hospital. I looked down at my handoff sheet, my handwriting, Karen's handwriting. Ames Robert, MRN 447,183, DOB 315-1960. Allergies, sulfamorphine, heparin 18 units kilogram Acer, troponin 0.47. Wife Margaret at bedside. The sheet was real. The ink was real. The co-signature was real. I picked up the phone and called Karen. She answered on the third ring. I could hear her TV in the background. Sounded like the news. Karen, it's me. Quick question about your handoff. What's up? Bed 12. Robert Ames. The chest pain. Silence. Then, Bed 12 was empty, Diane. It was empty all shift. You handed him off to me. 58-year-old male. Chest pain. Heparin drip. I didn't hand off anyone in Bed 12. Her voice was flat, not defensive, confused. Bed 12's been empty since I came on at 1500. I remember because I was hoping we'd get a transfer from Abbott and I was saving it. Karen, you co-signed my sheet. I signed your sheet, yes. I always sign your sheet. I don't remember handing off a Bed 12. I stared at the signature. Karen's. The loopy K, the way she always drew a little line under the date. I'd seen it 1,000 times. Okay, I said. Forget it. Probably my mistake. I hung up, and I want to tell you I laughed about it. Told myself I was tired, that I'd mixed up a patient from last week, that maybe I'd written down someone from Pod B in the wrong column. But I don't make those mistakes. 26 years. I don't write the wrong MRN on a handoff sheet. I don't invent allergies. I don't fabricate a heparin rate down to the units per kilogram per hour. I asked Shelley at the unit secretary desk to do me a favor. Can you search the old system for an MRN? 447,183. We'd migrated to Epic in May 2017, but the old CPSI data was archived on a read-only server that IT kept running for legal and billing purposes. Shelley knew how to access it. She'd been the one to train the new staff on the lookup process. She typed it in, waited. The old system was slow, green text on a black screen, like something from the 1990s. Got it, she said. Ames Robert J. Date of birth March 15, 1960. Last encounter. She squinted at the screen. January 15, 2007. 11 years ago. Tonight. What was the encounter? ED admission. Chest pain. Admitted to Pod C. She paused. Bed 12. I didn't say anything. Disposition. Deceased. Time of death. 3:12. She looked up at me. You want me to print this? Print it. The dot matrix printer in the back office whined and spat out 3 pages. I took them to the break room and closed the door. Robert James Ames, 58 years old. Presented to the emergency department on January 15, 2007, with substernal chest pain, pressure type radiating to the left jaw. Onset 4 hours prior to arrival. First troponin, 0.47 ingramilliliters. Heparin drip initiated at 18 units per kilogram per hour. 2 peripheral IVs. 18-gauge right antecubital, 20-gauge left hand. Documented allergies, sulfonamides, morphine sulfate. Emergency contact and bedside visitor, Margaret Ames, wife. Every detail Karen had given me in her handoff, the troponin value, the heparin rate, the IV gauges, the specific allergies, the wife's name, was on this chart. From 2007, not similar, not approximately the same, identical. As if someone had read this chart aloud, and Karen had repeated it word for a patient who'd been dead for 11 years. I set the pages down on the break room table and put my hands flat on the surface because they were shaking, and my hands don't shake. I went back to bed 12. I don't know why. When something doesn't make sense in the ED, you go look at it again. You reassess. That's what we're trained to do. Pod C was quiet. The COPD in bed 9 was sleeping under the BiPAP. The lac repair in 10 had been discharged. The drunk in 11 was gone. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights humming, that 60 hertz hum that lives in the back of your skull after 14 years of night shifts. I pulled the curtain on bed 12. Same empty bed, same clean linens, same coiled monitor cables on the pillow, same bare IV pole. But the cardiac monitor was on. It shouldn't have been on. It had been in standby mode 20 minutes ago. Dark screen, green power LED, waiting for leads to be connected. Now it was displaying a full rhythm strip. Sinus rhythm, rate 72, SpO2 97%, respiratory rate 16, blood pressure cycling, 138/82. The exact vitals Karen had reported in her handoff. I looked at the leads. They were still coiled on the pillow. 5 lead cable, white, green, red, black, brown, all 5 snaps open, connected to nothing. No electrodes, no patient, no chest to stick them to. I touched the screen. It was warm. The waveform scrolled smoothly, a textbook sinus rhythm. P wave before every QRS, consistent PR interval, narrow complex, T waves upright and symmetric. It was a beautiful rhythm. The kind you'd show a nursing student and say, this is what normal looks like. I disconnected the lead cable from the monitor, pulled it out of the port. The rhythm kept scrolling. Same rate, same waveform, same SpO2. I held the disconnected cable in my hand and watched the screen display a heart rhythm that had no source. I unplugged the monitor from the wall. The screen went dark. I stood there in the silence of the empty bay, holding a disconnected lead cable, staring at a dead monitor. 2 seconds, maybe 3. The screen powered back on, same rhythm, sinus, rate 72, SpO2 97%. The power cord was hanging loose from the back of the unit, plug on the floor, not connected to anything. I stepped back from the bed. My hands were still holding the cable. I set it down on the mattress and walked out of the bay, and I did not pull the curtain closed behind me. At the nurses' station, I paged biomedical engineering. Kevin from Biomed came up at the 2:15. I told him the monitor in bed 12 was malfunctioning, displaying artifact despite no patient connection. He went in, looked at it, said, huh, replaced the entire unit, wheeled the old one out on a cart. I filed an incident report. Equipment malfunction, cardiac monitor, bed 12, pod C, displaying erroneous data without patient connection. Biomed notified and unit replaced. I did not mention the handoff. I did not mention Robert Ames. I did not mention calling Karen. I did not attach my handoff sheet to the report. The rest of the shift was a shift. Flu patients, a fender bender at 400, a hypoglycemic diabetic at 530. Normal things. I gave my handoff to the day shift charge at 700. 13 patients on the board. Bed 12, empty, clean, available. I drove home on roads that were exactly as bad as Karen had said they were. I never told anyone about the chart match. I never told Karen what I'd found. She and I did Handoff together for 2 more years before she retired, and neither of us mentioned that night. But I kept the Handoff sheet. It's in a box in my closet with my old badge and my TNCC certificate and a photo from my 20-year pin ceremony. Sometimes I take it out and look at Karen's signature and my handwriting and the MRN that belongs to a dead man. I looked up the death certificate before I left that morning. Robert James Ames, pronounced 312, January 15th, 2007. Cause of death, acute ST elevation myocardial infarction, left anterior descending artery. Bed 12, Pod C, emergency department. The pronouncing physician was listed as Dr. K. Olson, PGY2. Karen Olson. She'd been a second-year medical resident in 2007 before she left medicine and went to nursing school. She never talked about why she switched careers. In 14 years of working together, she never once mentioned that she'd been a doctor first. She pronounced Robert Ames dead in bed 12 on January 15, 2007. 11 years later, to the night, she handed him off to me in the same bed. Vitals, labs, allergies, drip rates, as if he were still alive. I don't put any of this in charts. I don't tell my therapist the whole thing. I check the date every January and I make sure I'm not working. The monitor Kevin replaced. Biomed tested it. Fully functional. No fault codes. No stored alarms. No data in the event log from that night.